Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. I'm Cynthia Chaplin, and this is Voices. Every Wednesday, I will be sharing conversations with international wine industry professionals, discussing issues in diversity, equity, and inclusion through their personal experiences working in the field of wine. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and rate our show wherever you get your pods. Hello and welcome to Voices. I'm Cynthia Chaplin, and today I'm honored to have Professor Vincenzo Russo on Voices. He's a professor of consumer psychology and neuromarketing at IULM University in Milan, and he's a member of the scientific committee for the Milan Expo in 2015. But for our purposes today, he is the author of a fascinating book called Communicating Wine: Applied Neuromarketing Techniques, which takes an in-depth look at how to be effective in the area of wine communication. So welcome to the show, Vincenzo. Thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Thank you. Thank you for your invitation.
Well, I had a really interesting time reading through your book. It's a fascinating study of what works and what doesn't work in the world of wine marketing. What got you interested in looking into the wine sector in particular?
So when I talk with my student about the wine marketing area, I talk about a very big area interested by psychological, sociological, religious aspect. So it's very important to analyze the wine marketing strategy with a different approach respect to other kind of consumption, because there are a lot of meaning, psychological, sociological, religious aspect that we need to consider when we analyze the wine marketing strategy. So with our instrument, we analyze this field with a very new approach, with the neuroscientific approach. And we analyze two different things that is very important in this sector: the technical indication about the wine and the emotional aspect. And in particular, this aspect is very important for non-expert drinkers. So in this case, they use a lot the emotion that a label can produce, or the values that you can communicate with your website. For them is very important. So we have two different areas of analysis, and I think in this sector is very important the emotional one.
It's so interesting because a lot of wine consumption is very personal and very emotional on many levels. Can you explain to our listeners what constitutes an emotional response, and how can wine marketing generate an emotional response for consumers?
Yeah, this is a very important question, because when we talk about the emotional aspect, we think that the emotion is a variable that can change our our decision-making process. In reality, the emotion is a very important part of this kind of process. So when we talk about the emotional response, we talk about the normal approach to the stimuli. There is a very famous sentence from one of the main experts in neuroscience, Antonio Damasio. He was the author of one of the very incredible book. The title was The Discarded Error. And he said that we are not thinking machine that can have emotion, but we are emotional machine that we can have thinking process. So the emotion is a part of our reaction to the stimuli. The first part of the brain that we can activate with the stimuli is the limbic system, the very whole part of our brain dedicated to the emotion. So when we talk about the reaction, we talk about the emotional reaction, and then we activate the other part of the brain, the cortical part, the noble cortical part dedicated to the rational part of our decision-making process. So when we talk about the emotional response, we talk about the normal reaction to the people to, for example, the color of the wine, the color of the label, the size of the bottle. And I think in the wine sector, this aspect is very important. There is a very famous theory about the decision-making process from a very old expert that in 1981, they said that we have two different processes of decision making. The first one is linked with our rationality. And when we have a very big engagement, big motivation, and when we are expert, we use the rationality, we use the noble cortex. But many times we have a very low motivation, or if we have a very a high motivation, we can have also a low capacity of and ability to understand as expert. In this case, we use a very peripheral reaction, emotional reaction to decide. So usually when we talk about the consumer, we talk about non-expert usually. So they use a lot the emotional reaction that can produce a label or the color of the wine and so on. So for us in the wine marketing sector, is very important to analyze this part of our brain.
It's very interesting. You make a good point there too, that there are several categories of wine consumers, wine experts or sommeliers or just average wine drinkers or people who are new to wine. What are the different messages that appeal to each one of those groups? How can wine producers adapt their label design and their marketing to attract those people?
We know that there are a very different reaction to the stimuli, like a label from expert and non-expert. For example, from our studies, we can see that usually the non-expert look a lot information like organic certification of the wine, and usually the expert don't pay attention to this information. I don't know why, but usually when we compare the output from eye tracking, the tracking tool for the analysis of eye movement, we can see that the non-expert look at this indication, maybe because they understand the meaning of organic certification. They look at the organic certification, they look at the capacity of the bottle. It's a very strange because usually the capacity of the bottle usually is the same, but they look at this information maybe because they want to understand, or maybe because they understand this kind of information. Anyway, if we want to talk about the different aspects important for different expert and non-expert drinkers, we can see that the non-expert are so attracted by the history, the storytelling of the wine. Usually you can find the storytelling in the back of the label. And for them it's very important to understand the history of the winery, and they wanted to have more information about which kind of flavor they can try with this wine, and the combination with food. And for them, these three indications are so important. In expert like a sommelier, this is not so important. It's important which kind of wine you have in this product, and the brand, the terroir, and there's a very different approach. If we look at the brain of expert and non-expert and the activation of the brain with the magnetic resonance, we can see that the two groups use a different part of the brain. Usually the non-expert have the activation of the whole part of the brain linked with the emotion, the limbic system, and the expert have the activation of the dorsal prefrontal cortex. This part of the brain is linked with the rationality. So the approach to the wine is completely different. But I remember to the producer that usually the non-drinker, the non-expert are the big market. So maybe it's important to create the label for the non-expert and not for the expert.
That's such an interesting point. There are definitely fewer experts in the world than non-experts. So I can see what you mean. The market for non-experts is much bigger. I want to touch on something you just mentioned, the use of eye tracking and heat mapping experiments. Can you explain to our listeners what these methods were and how they worked in terms of measuring response? Because it's fascinating to read in the book. They can't see the photographs that you put in there, but if you could describe to us how that technology worked and how you came to these conclusions.
Yeah, the eye tracking is really a very easy tool for us because it's a very old instrument. Of course, now is a more sophisticated instrument for the analysis of the eye movement. With this tool, we can have indication about the fixation of some web page, for example, or the label. How many milliseconds people look this indication? The sequence of the vision of a little part of the bottle, a little part of the website. So it's a very important tool for the analysis of eye movement, for the analysis of the vision of something. But I think it's very important to use other instrument. The neuroscientific approach usually put together different tools like EEG, electroencephalography, that talk with the eye tracking instrument. So with the EEG, I can have information about which part of the brain is activated, and this for me is a very important indication because it can give indication of can give information about which kind of emotion, positive or negative, the people have when look something. So the EEG, the electroencephalography, talk with eye tracking, and if I use other instrument like evaluator of our skin conductance, heart rate, I can have also information about the intensity of the emotion. So the eye tracking is a very important tool for the analysis of the eye movement, but I think it's very important to have also indication about our brain, thanks to the EEG, electroencephalography, and our body, thanks to the other instrument for the analysis of respiration, heart rate, and skin conductance. The neuromarketing approach now is a very strong approach to the analysis of the emotion of the people. And there is a very famous sentence from one of the main experts in communication of the last century that can explain why we have to use this kind of instrument. The name of this expert is David Ogilvy, one of the main experts in advertising. And he said in 1963 a very interesting phrase. He said that the problem that we have when we want to understand a little more about our consumer is that the consumer don't think how they feel. They don't say what they think and they don't do what they say. So it's very difficult to have the real indication from the people with a questionnaire interview and focus group about their real emotion. So we needed to use other instruments for the emotional analysis like EEG, like the analysis of skin conductance, of course, eye tracking for the analysis of the eye movement.
That's so interesting. I've heard similar things said before about surveys and questionnaires, that people won't tell the truth even if they're anonymous because they don't want to be seen as being uneducated or not having a good palate. Even if they're drinking box wine, they won't admit to it. So that's a very good point. So the technology that you're using is much more of a 360-degree technology. You're able to track eye movement and other body responses and not rely on actually what the people say they're going to do. That's very interesting. Let me just ask you, Vincenzo, how do you do this research? Do you have 50 people in a room, each of them with bottles of wine in front of them? Or what does it look like when you're doing this research? I'm curious.
No, we usually have one person in our lab for each protocol, and because we spend 20 minutes to put all instrument in the body of the people, and but usually we have at the end of our research about 20 people or 30 people, and with a very short sample we can have a very valid data because we analyze the instinctual reaction of the people, and we don't analyze the opinion of the people. When we study the opinion of the people, we need a very big sample. But when we analyze the reaction of the people, the instinctual reaction of the people, we need to have a very short sample, a very little sample. So for us, it is important to have 20 people. But I remember you that we have a different reaction, instinctual different reaction from a man and a woman, and from people old and young people. So with 20 people for each subgroup, we can have a very valid data about the emotional reaction. But usually we have one person every time for the analysis. For example, in order to analyze the website or the reaction to the taste of the wine, the color of the wine, and so on.
And so interesting. Who is commissioning this research? Do wine producers come to you, or is it sort of a government body or a wine regulator? Who asks for this research? Because it's absolutely fascinating.
Usually, we work a lot with a very big company or a consortium because they have they have the sensibilization to spend money for the research. We work with very famous wineries and with a big company like the food field. There is a Lavazza, for example, or Carlsberg, Heineken, a very big company that spend a lot of money for communication, and they want to have more indication about the quality of the communication, the quality of the advertising, for example. But sometimes we worked also with little small companies. For example, a small company from the Langhe for a new communication of a bottle for Barolo, and because there is a very new generation, young owner that can understand the potentiality, the power for this kind of approach. So the cost of this approach is not so big, is not so high. So usually the cost is 10% of your investment. 5% is a very little part, but you are more indication about the quality of the efficacy of the communication.
Absolutely, and I think you've just hit on something really interesting. The younger generation tends to understand technology better and trusts technology more. So they're comfortable with using it, and I think they're comfortable with the findings. So that's a really interesting point, that young wine producers or younger people in the business are really open to using this kind of research. I think that's also fascinating. I just wanted to ask you, in your opinion, sort of what area of marketing is the most important, according to the research that you've done? Is it websites or social media or just simply the label by itself? What has the biggest impact? What generates the most response from the consumers in the lab?
But usually, I think it's important to have a very complex strategy for communication. It's very difficult to say that the website is more important than the label. I think it's important to have a very complex strategy, able to put together on the same direction the website, the social media marketing, and so on. But sometimes this approach depends on the target. If my target is only the people in a store, maybe it's better to invest money in a good bottle, a good label, and so on. But I remember you that the people usually love to have more information. So after the purchase of one bottle, maybe they go inside the website for in order to have more information about the winery. So it's very difficult to say that which is the main area where it's important to invest money. There is also an important consideration about the social media marketing. Many people say that we have the social media marketing, and then when you look at the social media marketing, you can find only Facebook page without new information, new news. I think it's very important to have a professional approach to the social media marketing.
Yeah, well, I think the concept of layering communication is really important. Not everyone tunes into the same sort of communication. I know that I don't follow Instagram the way that my 20-year-old children do. So I think that's a very good point, that there's no one solution to marketing and communicating, especially in wine. What advice would you give to producers seeking to sort of improve the impact of their marketing and generate more sales? What would you advise them to do?
I think in particular in Italy, more producers spend a lot of time to produce a very good product. And now I think it's very important to spend time, money, and effort for the good marketing strategy. I think it's very important to have a very clear indication about the target, about the best strategy, and I think it's very important to invest in professional expert inside the company, inside the binary, expert in communication, expert in marketing. Many times I found different producers that they said, yes, the communication, my son is expert in communication because he, but it's important to have a son with a professional competencies in this area. And we are working a lot with our master in food and wine communication in order to improve the capacity, the ability of the people in this field. For example, we have this master only for communication with 500 hours of lesson about marketing communication, and usually we need more hours. So the field is so big. We have a digital marketing, we have a traditional marketing, we have the events, we have the different approach, advertising and so on. It's very important to have one expert in this area, not the son.
Definitely. I think people tend to forget too, wine is not like a t-shirt. A lot of time and effort goes into making wine. So once you've invested all of that in your soil, in your technical abilities in the cantina, in all of your harvest, you definitely should be putting some money into actually selling the wine. So I think you have a good point there. Probably your son shouldn't be running that, absolutely. After all the effort that you've done to get your product to market, it should definitely get its message out. So this is a fascinating topic, and I'm so interested to hear how many opportunities to study at the university just wine marketing. It really shows how our society now is so inundated with messages. It's important to be able to target and to focus properly. So thank you so much for coming on. Before I let you go, I'm going to have to ask you, what is your favorite Italian wine, Vincenzo? What would you drink if you were opening a bottle for yourself?
I love Sicilian wine, and for me the best wine, the white wine, is from Baglio del Cristo di Campobello Laudari. It's a Chardonnay with a little bit more wood. It's very, very, very nice, very, very good.
Perfect. Aren't Sicilian wines doing well now? Talk about marketing success. Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. And this is such a fascinating topic to talk about. So thank you for giving me the chance to read your book and coming on and chatting with me today.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you for listening, and remember to tune in next Wednesday when I'll be chatting with another fascinating guest. Italian Wine Podcast is among the leading wine podcasts in the world, and the only one with a daily show. Tune in every day and discover all our different shows. You can find us at ItalianWinePodcast.com, SoundCloud, Spotify, Himalaya, or wherever you get your pods.
Guys, I'm Joy Livingston, and I am the producer of the Italian Wine Podcast. Thank you for listening. We are the only wine podcast that has been doing a daily show since the pandemic began. This is a labor of love, and we are committed to bringing you free content every day. Of course, this takes time and effort, not to mention the cost of equipment, production, and editing. We would be grateful for your donations, suggestions, requests, and ideas. For more information on how to get in touch, go to ItalianWinePodcast.com.